Hi, I'm Adam Summer. You're listening to the Yerushalmi Talk podcast with the support of the Yeshivat Devar Yerushalayim in Har Nof, Jerusalem. This is Berechot, Chapter 7, Halacha 1. Today we're going to be covering issues with Birkat Hamazon. That's going to be after you eat bread, you have to say the bracha after you eat bread. That, by the way, is Doraita. And in Devarim, in 8:10, it says, and you will eat and you will be satisfied. Now, we know that bread satisfies. So as we were learning in chapter 6, this idea of being satisfied is what's going to trigger Birkat Hamazon. And the verse continues, it says, and you shall bless Hashem your God for the good land he gave you. So after you eat, you are satisfied, and then you're blessing Hashem. That's the idea here. Now, the Gemara in chapter 7, Halacha 1 is going to get into the issue about Zimun. Now, Zimun is going to be interesting because there's a dispute whether that's going to be Doraita or Darabanan. Now, who says this is Doraita? There are quite a few who say this is Doraita. And the Torah in the Or Chaim in 188:6 says this is Doraita, and also the Chazan Ish says it's Doraita. Their idea would be that you have to say a blessing afterward, and they're saying that the Zimun would be that blessing in addition to the bread. Now, not everybody holds that it's going to be Doraita. There are a lot of opinions on whether it's going to be Darabanan. The Ritva holds that it's Darabanan. So you have a really strong mix of real Torah scholars who are not clear on it. But anyway, when you have an assembly of not assembly, but when you have three men, you do Zimun. And so basically what happens is the Zimun is going to come before the Birkat Hamazon. And the way we're going to do it today is a little bit different than the ideal way. The way we're going to do it today is because, people, they don't really concentrate very well. They don't listen very well. They're not really trained to do it. So because they don't have that kind of attention, they're not going to be covering basic parts on Birkat Hamazon. So the way we do it today, which is not necessarily the ideal way to do it, but it's the way to do it in today's generation, is that the individual recites the entire Birkat Hamazon himself, with at least the first blessing said quietly, along with the leader. That's the way we're doing it today. Now, originally, the leader of the Zimun blessing recited the entire Birkat Hamazon aloud on behalf of the entire group of people, who would fulfill their obligation by carefully listening in silence to every single word, and they would say Amen. That's going to be the ideal, but people today don't have that level of focus to do it, so we don't do it that way. So we do it the way that we do it in the generation we live. Now, the idea is Zimun. You have Birkat Hamazon. That always has to be said. But Zimun is said with at least three people. They are eating the meal together. It's not like this case that we were talking about where there's a lot of people at a bench and they're eating individually. That would not warrant Zimun. If they're eating together as a meal, then that meal is going to bind them together, and it's going to be a Zimun. And it calls for one member of the group to the others, and there's basically calling out to bless Hashem. They say, let us bless he whose food we've eaten. The others respond in kind. And, they say, blessed is he whose food we've eaten and through goodness we live. And then it's repeated by the leader. That's going to be the note by the Rambam in Hilchos Barachos 5:2. Now, There's a special rule when 10 or more men eat together. They recite a special version of the Zimun blessing that contains the explicit mention of Hashem's name. So that's something to keep in mind about it. Now, we'll get into the Mishnah on Halacha 1. So the Mishnah starts off, it says, 3 people who ate bread together are required to join in Zimun. Now, this is a thing where you have a collective blessing over where they're eating a bread meal. Now, if you're all eating a pasta meal and there's no bread there, you're not going to be saying Zimun. This is on a bread meal, and the Mishnah lays that out clearly. In chapter 6, we were talking about appetizer meals or hors d'oeuvres, courses of hors d'oeuvres. Well, that would not be warrant for Zimun, and the Mishnah is very, very clear and starts off 3 people, they ate bread together. Okay, now the idea is that in a collective blessing that's recited in a plural form, they're saying, let us bless, and that we have eaten, right? That's going to be based on the Rashi's note in the Mishnah, and he's pointing out that it's said in the plural. Now, in order for there to be a Zimun requirement, the 3 people have to have a meal in a real way. So you can't have people, you can't have people that weren't eating together and then come just to say it, and they weren't really doing it. No, they had to all have the intention that they're really going to be doing a meal. We were talking about this in chapter 6, this idea of reclining, this idea that in Pesach, yes, you're literally reclining, right? But the term for reclining is that you have the intention of eating a meal together and collectively, and so that this is a prerequisite in order to do this. Now, in today's day, when you eat together, you're not sitting there reclining because the tables are set up differently and the culture is different. But in the Mishnah time, it was. Now, if you're all sitting at a table eating together, the Zimun is going to apply even if you're not reclining, because you're all together from the start of the meal. And so you've joined together to have this bond and connection. And when you have this bond by eating together, it's something that you're going to go say a blessing on. And this, by the way, everybody knows this, that when you have a meal together, you do bond with the other people. And that's why you have to be very careful if you're a Torah scholar, not necessarily to eat with Amaratzim, not only because they won't necessarily be careful with the food, but because you end up getting a connection with them. And also in Masechet Avodah Zarah, it's very serious for Jews to sit and have meals with idol worshippers. Now, I'm not talking about somebody who believes in God and they're like they believe in all the 7 high laws and everything like that. I'm not talking about somebody like that. I am talking about somebody who's like a Hindu or a Buddhist or a Christian. You shouldn't be sitting down and eating with these people. You do create a connection with them, and inevitably, especially in the case of a Christian, especially if they're religious, it's a matter of time before they bring up their fake God, and now you have this connection. Now you're listening to them, and we know that there's a story from the great holy of holy Rabbi Eliezer that he even heard one thing that a Christian said that he agreed with, and he was almost given death from heaven for it. It's so serious. So you don't want to put yourself into a position where you're listening to people and you're being influenced by them. It's very serious to sit down with people that might be a heretic or they might have heretical ideas and to listen. Now, I'll tell you a personal story. Before I was going to marry my wife, I went over to a friend's family that she knows here in Harnof, and they're Haredi, but the guy is kind of Haredi, but maybe kind of losing his faith. And in the meal, Shabbos lunch, he's just sitting there talking about dinosaurs and how stupid the Haredi education system is in front of his kids, which is tragic, and talking about that, talking about science and evolution. And I said, thank you very much. And I said the bracha, I said Berechot Mazon, I got my hat, and I walked out. But, you don't sit there and listen to kfirah while you're eating a meal, because you're able to be influenced and you have a unity. And that's part of this thing about people eating together. Now, when you have, three people who are observing eating together, well, there's a power in that. And so you're going to come to bless Hashem. Now, when there's 10 men, now you're going to come and say that blessing of Zimun with Hashem's name. And by the way, it's a requirement, whether it's going to be D'oraita or D'Rabbanan, this is a requirement. Now, the Mishnah continues, says, if one ate bread of Damai, or Meiser Rishon, whose Truma has been taken, or of Meiser Sheni, or consecrated produce that was redeemed, or if the waiter ate a olive's volume of bread, or Kuthian ate together with us. In all these cases, we join in Zimun on account of them. Now, this is going to be a little bit controversial. In this case, all of the people mentioned are going to be eligible, says the Haredim, for inclusion in the three-person quorum for Zimun. Now, keep in mind, on the Kuthian, Rabban Gamliel was the one who later disqualified these people. Before, there was a question whether they were sincere converts or not. They were later disqualified. So you have to check on what period of time this mission is being talked about. It may have been Rebbe who disqualified it. It was either Rabban Gamliel or Rebbe. You have to check that. But the point is that they later got disqualified. So this is talking about the time where they were maybe considered Jewish, and basically what happened was, Kuthians, they were idol worshippers. They were brought by the Assyrians to Eretz Yisrael to mix up. They were probably a conquered people from over there, and that's what they wanted to do, was to mix people up so that they wouldn't really feel a connection to the land, and they wouldn't overthrow their overseers, the Assyrians. And this was why they took all the people over to Bavel, and the idea was that you wouldn't really have a strong connection to the land, you wouldn't be nationalistic, and they could just control you, they could tax you, and what happened was they converted because they didn't know how to live in the land. And you can see this in Kings. It's the second book of Kings. Now, the question about their conversion was always a dispute, even up until the Tanaim, and even up until the early Amorim. Later, it was resolved that they were not considered Jews, and the Mishnah is going to be predating that resolution, and it's going to be the opinion from these Tanaim that the Kuthians at this time are considered Jews. And the idea is that those who ate questionable foods like the bread of Damai may also be included, since the foods listed are in fact permitted for consumption. But someone who ate Damai is subject to the Zimun obligation for the reason that we're talking about. And the reason that we're talking about is that that they're eligible. Okay, so I want to just cover some of this on the bread of Damai. Somebody who eats forbidden produce, forbidden foods, is ineligible to join in Zimun. So like somebody who is coming and being like a shvius merchant, not eligible for Zimun. Now, the Mishnah is listing foods that appear to be prohibited, but they technically do not disqualify someone for Zimun. Now, Damai is going to be something where unlearned Amoratzim people were not careful about separating the tithes, and the term Damai is a contraction of da mai, being like, what is this? And basically it's a clue that is this going to be tithed or was it not tithed? And since the majority of the population did separate the basic Doraita tithe, there's no biblical prohibition against eating it. But there are some other things that have to be done as well, and they weren't careful about it. Doesn't mean they didn't do it. It means they weren't careful about it. So you can't trust it. They weren't all careful about it. Now, the rabbis, they went and they put a prohibition against eating damai without separating those tithes that are in doubt. And why would that be? Because if you're a haver, you can assume that they did the basic biblical obligation of the tithes, but the other tithes you have to assume they didn't do. And those would be some of the rabbinic ones. And so then what you would do is you would go separate tithes off of that, and then you would clean up the food. Now, if somebody is eating this food of damai and he didn't separate it, well, he's not eating truly forbidden food that's banned by the Torah. He just is not doing the whole thing. And yes, rabbinically, it's forbidden to eat damai without separating the tithes. First, we're talking about somebody who is uneducated and he didn't know and he still ate the food. Now, I want to point out something, that if somebody's very, very poor, they're allowed to eat damai, as is. Now, since a person at any time can declare, that if somebody were very poor, they could declare all their belongings ownerless. And since everybody is potentially a poor person, is permitted to eat damai, so that damai could potentially be permitted, it's not treated as the same as eating forbidden food, which is totally forbidden. So the question is, when you're completing the processing of produce grown in Eretz Yisrael, you're required to separate truma and meiser, and you're separating first, 2%, and then you give that to the Kohen, and then you're separating out 10% for the meiser rishon, which you give to the Levi, and then you're giving another 10%, which is the meiser sheni, which is for you to eat in the city walls of Jerusalem during the holidays, and it's somewhat sanctified. Now we're talking about the Levi in this Mishnah, where it says the meiser rishon whose truma has been taken, and we're talking about the Levi who, when he receives the meiser rishon, he has to designate 10% of it as truma meiser, which he gives to the Kohen. And the Mishnah is basically saying that somebody who ate bread made from the produce of meiser rishon, whose truma meiser has been separated, may participate in Zimun. And the idea is that since all the required tithes were separated, it's fine, and there's no reason to think that one who partakes can't participate in Zimun. So why would that be referring to something that would seem to be obviously permitted, right? And the Mishnah is referring to a case, says the Haredim, where the Truma Meiser was separated from the Meiser, but the general Truma, which is going to be the Truma Gedola, was not separated, and needs to be separated. And so that, the owner, basically was mistaken, and he separates Truma, the Meiser Rishon, from the produce before it's processed and before it's completed. And so basically there's a defect in the way it was done. And so the Mishnah is teaching that if somebody ate bread made of this grain, one might have thought it's a forbidden food, but it's not actually a forbidden food. You can include it in Zimun, and it's permissible. Now, we're also talking about the Meiser Sheni, and that's going to be where you have to eat that in Jerusalem. Why would that be in here? Now, this is going to be a case where it looks like the Mishnah is stating something obvious. Why, that he's eating something from Meiser Sheni, so of course and it's consecrated. Of course, he should be able to, eat it. Why are you bringing this up, right? We're talking about cases of people who it looks like they're eating forbidden produce. What's going on here? And this is a case where says the Haredim that the Mishnah is not talking about somebody who ate bread outside of Jerusalem made of Meiser Sheni. Basically, what it's saying is that it's referring to a case where the owner redeemed these items according to the proper value, but they forgot to take an additional fifth while they made the exchange. So that the Mishnah is really teaching is that the failure to include the additional fifth penalty that the Torah commands, when they didn't do the exchange correctly, basically what would happen is you would let's say you're up in Sfat and you have your produce, then you turn it into coins and you go down to the temple and you want to eat food, right? And it's the holiday of the foot, so you have to add an additional fifth to the value of them, right? And then what happens is you're transferring the sanctity from the money onto this new produce. You have to add a fifth. Well, this is talking about a case where they didn't add the fifth. So would that be permitted? Now, what about the waiter? Now, a waiter who's waiting on people and they ate a kazait bread, well, they would be required to say a bracha on the bread. And basically, this would be completing the quorum of the three people for Zimun. Now, the waiter was not seated and normally can't join to say Zimun unless he's eating together with these people. And they have to be in a sort of permanent, connected, unified way. So, since this is the way that a waiter normally eats, like he's eating on the run, says the Rosh in the commentary on the Mishnah, it's basically like he's eating a proper meal and he's allowed to join in Zimun. So this is talking about all these sorts of odd cases, but they're not odd, right? They're just permitted, and it's laying out, you might think it's not permitted, but in fact it is permitted. And it continues and it says, Kuthian, and we explained the Kuthian that, the question is going to be whether they're going to count for whether they're Jewish or not. Certainly a non-Jew does not count in a Zimun blessing. So the question is going to be, at this time, were they Jewish? The Tanaim at this time were saying yes. The Mishnah finishes up and says, however, if one ate tevel, Meiser Rishon whose truma has not been taken, or Meiser Sheni or concentrated produce that was not redeemed, or if the waiter ate less than a kazait of bread, or a non-Jew ate with us, in all of these cases we do not join in Zimun on account of them. So the idea is that the Mishnah is not teaching that a non-Jew can't participate in Zimun, because that's obvious, right? The mitzvah of Zimun and the blessing on the bread doesn't apply to a non-Jew at all. So that's not really what the Gemara is talking about. The Gemara is talking about a non-Jew who's in the process of converting to Judaism. So he didn't, perhaps he went and got circumcision and he's waiting to go to the mikvah. You have to wait. You need a couple of days to heal. And perhaps he's waiting, for a few days to heal. Usually, the bad part of the circumcision is on the third day. So perhaps he didn't yet go to the mikvah, and he's going to go, and he's in the process. So the question is, can he go into the mikvah? Can he eat, say, Zimun, even though he got circumcision with the intention to be a Jew, but he didn't yet go into the mikvah? And that's really what this is teaching. the Meiser Sheni produce is going to be redeemed with minted coins. Has to have an image stamped on it. And the idea is that perhaps this Mishnah is talking about coins where the Meiser Sheni was with unminted metal slugs and it wasn't redeemed properly. So that basically, if the redemption process on the Meiser Sheni is not done right, it's ineffective. And so you also, by the way, have a prohibition of eating the Meiser Sheni outside of Jerusalem. So that's also an issue. So, somebody who ate Meiser Sheni outside of Jerusalem, well, they would also be ineligible for Zimun. So that's also the case. Now, what about, eating tevel? Well, tevel is very, very serious. And, the scripture is teaching that, it's so serious to eat this. So, yes, no Zimun is possible. But that really seems very obvious. So what is the Gemara really trying to teach? What is the Mishnah trying to teach? And the idea is that this Mishnah is going to really be teaching that somebody who ate bread made of rabbinically prohibited tevel cannot be included in Zimun. Now, under biblical law, only the produce that has nourishment from the ground of Eretz Yisrael is going to be subject to tithing. But if you have produce that is going to be grown in a flower pot without a hole, with a hole, then you would have nourishment through the ground. And if you have it in an unperforated flower pot, then it's subject to the law of tithing under rabbinic law, and you have to do it under rabbinic law, not Doraita, because it didn't actually get it through the ground. And so in that kind of case, the produce in an unperforated pot is rabbinically prohibited as tevel, and the Mishnah is teaching that one who ate such produce is not counted in the Zimun. And the other case where Meiser Rishon, where the Truma Meiser was not separated, that would also be obvious because it's actually tevel, it's actual tevel, and you get all sorts of death from heaven problems when you eat it. So it's actually very serious to have. You're going to have a lot of problems if you eat tevel. So they're actually talking about where the Mishnah is talking about where the Levi took the tithes before the Cohen did, and that's going to be the idea when they smooth out the thing. They didn't do the tithing in order, and so the Levi took his tithes before the Cohen did his tithes. It's out of order. So basically, this is going to be saying that you can't take it. Now let's get into the Gemara. The Gemara is going to talk about the opening words in the Mishnah, and the Mishnah is going to be saying that 3 people who ate together are required to join in Zimun. And the Gemara says here, the Halacha, it is stated 3 people who ate together are not allowed to separate. And here, the Mishnah, it is stated 3 people who ate together are required to join in Zimun. So what this is asking is this is saying that it's necessary, says the Haredim, to have 2 rulings which ultimately teach the same thing. That 3 people join together, they must perform Zimun and not recite the Berechot Mazon on their own. There's going to basically be saying that if the Zimun, says Haredim, had been stated once, we would have assumed that there is only a Zimun requirement when 3 people begin and end eating together. And the Mishnah is repeating the law to teach that the Zimun requirement comes into effect at the beginning of the meal and remains in effect even if they do not end together. So Gemara is going to answer this because it's going to be talking about, well, what is the beginning and what is the end? So the Gemara answers, and Shmuel says, by stating the law here for a second time, it teaches that once they join together at the beginning, the Zimun requirement is incumbent upon them, even if they do not complete the meal together. While here, the first time, it only teaches that it is incumbent upon them that if they were still eating together at the end. So the idea by Haredim is that you need these two rulings, and they're going to basically be teaching the same thing. And over here, it's going to be talking about the beginning part of the meal, and over here, it's going to be talking about the end part of the meal. And so that's why you need these two rulings on this. Now, there's going to be a question, and the Gemara is going to ask. It says, what is considered the beginning of a meal and what is considered the end? And this now is a subject of dispute between two Amorim. And the Gemara says, one said, when they decide to eat together, it is called at the beginning. And when they eat a kazait, it is called at the end. And the other one said, when they eat a kazait, it is called the beginning, at the beginning. And when they finish the meal, it is called at the end. So one of the Amorim is saying that the intention to eat together is the beginning. And the end is when they actually break the bread and they eat a kazait with the blessing. And that's going to be what triggers this. The other one is saying that they eat the kazait already. That's going to be considered the beginning of the meal. And when they finish the meal, that's going to be the end. You can see here that it looks like there's really no contradiction. One is talking about what is going to be starting a meal together. And then the other one is going to be talking about actually what is a meal, right? You had bread and you finished the bread and you're going to say the bracha. The other one is saying that and no contradiction to it, that the three people decided to form a group and eat together with it. And they actually ate the bread together. And that's what's going to be triggering what is going to be this meal and what's going to obligate them to have the mitzvah to say Zimun. That's going to be the idea. Now, if the Tana only was teaching in the Mishnah that the Zimun requirement is going to be where they finish their meal together, then the ruling gets repeated. And why would that be? That's going to be teaching where they ate a kazait, and the kazait is going to be this minimum amount that actually triggers the Birkat Hamazon obligation. And this is going to be this idea that the decision to even eat together does not bring on the requirement to perform Zimun unless they're eating a kazait of bread. That's going to be the idea. And it's going to be, this intention to eat, and it's going to be eating this bread, and it's going to be this minimum measure of bread. That's what's going to be important to this Tana, or this Amorah. Now, in this discussion, we're talking about the Zimun requirement with regards to three people who ate together, and it's clear that the Mishnah, is saying that it does not apply to less than three people. So, what happens if, two people want to say Zimun? Can they? Are they allowed to? So the Gemara asks and says, Rabbi Abba, in the name of Rav Huna, and Rabbi Zera, in the name of Abba bar Yirmiyah, said, if three people ate together, it is a requirement that they perform Zimun, but if two people ate together, Zimun is optional. And the Gemara continues and says, Rabbi Zera related this ruling before Rabbi Yasa, and Rabbi Yasa told him, I have only our Mishnah, which reads, three who ate together are required to join in Zimun, which implies that Zimun does not apply when two people eat together. So that's the very sharp and very insightful answer by Rabbi Yasa, who's saying, look, I have this Mishnah, and it says three. So that's a good idea. Now, Radam is pointing out, if you have two people, they may perform Zimun, and if they were able to say Zimun for two people, the Mishnah should have added that two people are allowed to perform Zimun. That's going to be the idea of Rabbi Yasa. Rabbi Yasa is saying, look, if you could have two, why didn't the Mishnah just say it? Why did it say three? Gemara is going to answer. It's going to say the view of the rabbis here Rabbi Yasa, who was in Eretz Yisrael, that two people have the option of performing Zimun, is with the opinion, conforms with their opinion in a different issue. And in the view of the rabbis there, Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Zera, who came from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, conforms with their opinion on that same issue. For Shmuel said, that's going to be a Babylonian rabbi, if two judges adjudicated, their decision is a valid decision, but it is called an insolent court. So basically, they disregarded the sage's enactment requiring 3 judges, but did the ruling still stand? The idea is that, yes, the ruling still stands, but it's an insolent court, and they're going to be punished for it in Shemayim. Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Zera are basically going to be deriving their opinion that 2 people may perform Zimun based on this ruling of Shmuel, and that Rabbi Abba, Rabbi Zera, and Shmuel were Babylonian. But the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish both say, even if 2 judges adjudicated, their decision is not a valid decision, and this is consistent with the opinion of Rabbi Yasa, also in Eretz Yisrael, that 2 people may not perform Zimun. So that's going to be the idea. The idea is that, according to Rabbi Yochanan and Yasa and Shimon ben Lakish, 3 Eretz Yisrael rabbis, they're all saying that it's not valid. And there's going to be another ruling, which the Gemara is going to talk about with Rabbi Zera's ruling. And by the way, I want to point out what the Pnei Moshe says on this. It says that, even after the fact, the ruling of 2 judges is going to be invalid. And basically, Rabbi Yochanan and Shimon ben Lakish, in the Mishnah in Sanhedrin, which requires a minimum of 3 judges to be understood, to be disqualifying their judgment even after the fact if there were 2 judges. That's the note by the Pnei Moshe to explain this. And this Mishnah is going to be similar, says the Pnei Moshe, that it's going to require 3 for Zimun, and that's teaching that there is no opinion of Zimun with less than 3. That's the idea. So you have a difference in opinion between the scholarship of Eretz Yisrael and Bavel at this time. And there's another ruling based on and related to Rabbi Zera's ruling. Rav Huna says 3 people who ate, each one on his own, and they subsequently join in Zimun together, even though these 3 never ate together. So why would that be? Literally, the 3 are all by themselves, and there's going to be a stipulation that's added to make this work. Rav Chizda says, but this applies only when they came from 3 groups which were previously subject to Zimun. Now, if 2 of the people were subject and one was not, then they can't come together to do it. So what would happen if one of the people didn't eat a kazait of bread? Well, can they come to make Zimun? Well, he wouldn't be liable to do it. That's the point of what Rabbi Huna is saying. So always check the halacha l'maisa, but that's what this is saying. So the Gemara is going to continue. It's going to say that, even according to the view of Rabbi Zera and members of this group who maintain that 2 people who ate together may perform Zimun, they are only subject to the Zimun requirement when each of the original group consisted of at least 3 who ate together. And the Pnei Moshe says about this that the Zimun requirement is only incumbent upon them when they were originally part of the group that was required to perform Zimun, that is, one consisting of 3 or more people. Now, we're going to get on to the next topic about Zimun, and it's going to say, based on this ruling regarding a bundle of Esav stalks that were used in the purification process of somebody who handled the corpse tuma with the water from the para aduma, they took the Esav stalks and they dipped it in the para aduma and they sprinkled it on the person. And Rabbi Yonah derived the following from the ruling of Rav Huna. if one dipped 3 Esav stalks, each one by itself, and they were joined together, he may sprinkle them. And just as with regard to Zimun, where Rav Chisda said that they are only subject to the Zimun requirement where the members of the final group came from 3 groups that were each previously subject to Zimun, so too regarding the dipping of the Esav stalks. And they are only valid for sprinkling when they came from 3 bundles. That's going to be the idea here. Very, very sharp insight on this. I mean, very sharp insight by Rav Huna. And the Gemara continues and says, with regards to Zimun, where Rav Chisda stated that even according to the view of Rabbi Zera and his group, who maintain that Zimun may be performed by 2, where they join together, are going to be subject to the Zimun obligation and requirement, then, each one was originally part of a group of 3 who ate together, so too the Esav stalks may be used for sprinkling only when he dipped all 3 at once. In other words, that, the idea would be that each one was part of a bundle of 3 when it was dipped. So according, to Zimun, 3 people who ate together originally as part of, separate groups consisting of 2 people who joined together are not subject to Zimun, even according to the opinion of Rabbi Zera, says Haredim, so too that when the stalks of the Esav are originally dipped, they were bundles containing less than 3 stalks. They are disqualified from use, even though the final bundle consists of 3 stalks. That's going to be the idea here. And the Gemara is going to comment on it, and it's going to say that, and if you will respond, we cannot derive the laws of Esav from the unrelated subject of the Zimun blessing, I will counter and say why we see that when the rabbis were engaged in the study of the laws of Sukkah, they derived the law of the ruling regarding pourable mud in the mikvah. So in the Mishnah and mikvahs, it talks about pourable mud where there's enough liquid in it, and it could come together, with like sea salt and combined with the water up to the prerequisite 40 seah amount. So it looks like, hey, maybe this law on Esav is unrelated. And they're saying, no, it's actually very related. So the Mishnah is going to continue, and the Gemara is going to continue, is going to say, as we learned in the Mishnah, if one distanced the shach 3 tefachim from the walls, leaving 1 space between them, the sukkah is invalid, which implies, but if the open space was less than 3 tefachim, it is valid. Now the question arises, what is the law with regards to sleeping beneath the open space of less than 3 tefachim? And Rabbi Yitzhak ben Eliashiv countered, what question is there? Why, there is the question of pourable mud, from which an analogy can be drawn. For it completes a mikvah, yet one may not immerse in it. And so too here, with regards to the space of the roof of the sukkah, yes, it completes the sukkah, yet one may not sleep beneath it. Now, we know that a mikvah has to have at least 40 seah to be valid for immersion, but pourable mud will contribute to that 40 seah of the mikvah. Nonetheless, if immersed in the mud part of the mikvah, the immersion is invalid. And so too, the pourable mud part becomes problematic if you're touching it. And if you're not touching it, then it would be valid. But if you are touching it and you're in the mud part, then it is invalid. So, yes, pourable mud would supplement the rainwater, and it would finish up that 40 seah requirement. Nevertheless, you're not supposed to immerse in the part of the mikveh which has all the mud. And yes, the mikveh is kosher, but the immersion in the rainwater, the immersion has to be in the rainwater. And so too, in the sukkah, where you have an opening of less than 3 tefachim, yes, it's valid, but you can't fulfill the mitzvah in an open area of the sky. So it wouldn't be valid if you did it that way. And so what's going on over here, just like the rabbis over here are deriving the principles from the sukkah and the mikvah, which are not related to each other, so too regarding the Esav, which is derived from this unrelated law of the Zimun, we derive we can derive the Zimun from the bundle of the three Esav stalks that were used for the paradama water when you're going to be purifying somebody from touching a corpse. The Gemara is going to go talking about another law relating to one who leaves a group of three who ate together. And we're going to cover that tomorrow because it's going to get into more details about when people go away and they come back and like that. But the bringing up of the Esav is very sharp. It's a very smart idea. And, there's a lot going on here with Zimun because it's a blessing to Hashem for your sustenance. And, it's very important to do because it actually might be Doraita. The Chazan Ish says it's Doraita. The Torah says it's Doraita. And really, it's important to concentrate on the brachas and the prayers and to listen to them so that, you can learn more about it and feel more connection with your Yiddishkeit. Anyway, have a great day.